Hello. Today is April 2nd, 2024. This is SIG Node weekly meeting. Welcome, everybody. First topic for today is from Sotiris about in-place vertical autoscaling.
Yes, hi. As it was discussed in Slack in the related SIG of node in place pod resize, I think it was proposed by Dixitat mention this in the agenda today and see how we should to bring it up and see how we could perhaps plan for it. I don't know. There are some to-dos which needs to be done, so I can help for the next 2-3 months from my side. So yes, so that's the item. I mean, I don't know if Dixita is online.
Hi, I'm online.
Yes.
So I requested to add this to agenda, and luckily we also have people from ByteDance on the call, and there are a lot of actionable items and to-dos to launch in-place pod resize to beta. So I was wondering if we can create a small working group and meet separately and then discuss however each person wants to help. Right now, I'm not sure who's leading the space from ByteDance. So if anyone is on call and they are okay leading the working group, and then we can just coordinate and um, meet and then decide what are the things that each person wants to work on.
So Dikshit, I think Vinay has created a channel or something that he added a bunch of us to last week. So is there where you want to coordinate the efforts?
Yeah, I created the channel actually.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to reach out to people from ByteDance earlier, even though I added them in the group. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate this in this meeting. I see.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, this is Jashi from ByteDance. Yeah, actually, yeah, when the first version I think was released, Renee and I discussed to make some improvements. So at that time, I think he handed over some tasks to me, and since we used the feature internally, we also made some improvements. But I do see your like proposals, and I think yeah we can work together in that channels to talk about the next steps. Yeah, that would be great because I do see there's still a lot of like pending items and the to-do items. So yeah, it would be great. We can collaborate together to fix them. The current thing is that we haven't split all the like subtasks from those like to-do items. I think that would be a good like a first step. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Akshan. Yeah, I was wanting to discuss it further in the channel. So good that you're
Yeah.
on this call today. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of just a reiteration and announcement where we were trying to collaborate in that group. So good that everyone is on the same page. I'll reach out again
Yeah.
on the channel and then we can finalize the timing as to when we want to meet and work further.
Sounds good.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think this is one of those top items. Last time we talked about choosing top 5, right? So I look at today's agenda is too much, so maybe we don't have the time. But this is at least we talk about this one is one of the top one because it's been held too long. We want to make progress. I agree with that. I'm open with anything, but I don't think about this is necessary with the work group. But let's find out like small teams to discussing and then come back to the signal for the review and the plan. Is that okay? Because I don't want like always like last couple years. There's a small group and decided, and then come back and after progress right before of the code freeze and people change their mind, and then we hold the project again and keep doing this kind of things. So that's why I hope this time we small group and we discussed and then immediately come back to report back to the signal.
Yeah, I think that's the proposal down. I mean, the main motivation for this proposal. It is just to ensure that we are not working the same tasks. I mean, and to ensure that we move ahead in a smooth way, and of course to be aligned in SIG Node. And my comment is that I think some parts, at least for the item that I'm also involved in the CPU manager relation, that it is one of the items. I think it has popped up also improvements in the test. I think Francesco, in one of the committee, has mentioned it. And so, yes, definitely we are, my goal and my motivation is also to collaborate. Definitely, yes.
Actually, I don't have much concern about the SIG Node. I'm more concerned about the wider community. Yeah, because this is driving by SIG Node for such a long time, and then at the end always have like the different inputs. So that's why I hope we report back to the SIG Node, then we can proactively reach out beyond SIG Node to then we can have like the feedback as early as possible instead like the end of the. I'm not concerned about the SIG Node because SIG Node later to accelerate this process actually takes some compromise already. So that's why I don't want this is hold another 6 years or something like that.
No. We are speaking to make it for. I'm fully passionate about it. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Yes, thanks.
So I would like to add one more thing. So one good thing is a lot of people are interested in contributing. So I have added people to the channel, and I also want to mention that Tim Allclair is actually leading the space and just helping in the coordination. That's all.
Leading the space from the Google side. But yeah, looking forward to working with the community on this.
One thing I want to add is to contribute. All the contributions welcome, but not all the contribution is mean like the have to be coding, right? So there's the validate use cases and the testing. This one is really critical contribution. I just want to make sure people. Yeah.
No. Most of the tasks are around testing. That's for sure. Yes. And I think, yes, I totally agree. I think testing is like 80% for that's in my view. Yes, totally agree.
Thanks.
I want to, sorry for going into details, but I want to urge you to, as I said, go through use cases and scenarios, because all the use cases I hear so far relying on the fact that there will be no restarts, for instance, and there is a guarantee no restart behavior, which wasn't designed in API. So API review for those use cases will be needed, and please don't postpone it for too far. Okay, if there is no comment on this one, let's go to the next one. Performance issues for in place with VPA. Jackson?
Yeah, so recently, I think earlier we cut a PR to fix the in-place performance issue. It reduced the scaling time from minute to 1 or 2 seconds at the couplet level. But that PR was not changed, and reviewer gave some feedbacks that we should make the change at the plug component. So after some investigation, we noticed the plug actually doesn't take the in-place status into the consideration. So that makes the that means they never emit update event. So the loop doesn't help. So in that case, we cut a new PR, and recently we get some feedbacks from the community members, and they like to adopt the patch and hope us to fix the issue as soon as possible. So I'm checking anyone can help from the SIG Node side to help review the plug change. Yeah, so that's the kind of upgraded version of the previous patch. Yeah.
This is the Plague. Plague doesn't know anything about kubelet status. So you're saying that there's nothing that triggers an update when the status on the API server changes to the sync loop?
So when the in-place update the call the CRI to update the container resources, and in the single couplet sync pod loop, we want to detect the changes in the end. So this we like to leverage the plug to emit an event to notify okay, this is being updated at the container level. But the plug because it runs every seconds to generate the events, right? So at the time it generates the events, it try to compare the status. So technically, if a pod is being updated, so the container resources and the API status could be different. But in the plug update cycle, we didn't check the in-place specific fields. So that makes the plug doesn't work for the in-place case. Does it make sense?
Yeah. So you want to make sure that when CRI takes an action, that
yes,
Plague
that's true.
reflects once CRI has completed. Yeah, I mean that would be a bug in Plague, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. If we have that change, so the status will pick up and the in-place update will be finished in single couplet loop. So that will shorten the scaling time.
Yeah, that would be, and this would also need to be done in evented Plague. I'll add a few comments. Sorry, Don.
So of course the event Plague will be getting better, but my point is let's just review this one, and yeah, this is definitely a bug. Let's review this one. We don't need to block. Lesson to do is
yeah. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, to raise this.
Next one, Matthias.
Hi. Yeah. So this is to discuss a behavior we saw while implementing some code coverage on the probing mechanism. And we realized that when we have a post start that is running for too long, it prevents the container from calling the pre-stop, and which also means that the normal container termination is not called until the post start is finished. So I included a diagram taken from Teams slide deck. I don't know if you want to share this or not, but basically there is a behavior today, and we want to solve this. But I would like to make sure that nobody think that there is a use case attached to this behavior. So yeah, so basically you see that after starting and before we have either failed or finished the post start, there is nothing that will happen, because we are in this limbo state. And if at this moment we have termination that is called, the pod isn't even running there. So I have also included the link to the code. I think that is there. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't run the debugger, but the goal is just to make sure that nobody. Yeah, I don't think. I think only slide 3 is important here, but.
You say pod terminated, so this is somebody in the API deleting the pod?
Yeah.
Okay. Which before we changed context cancellation, and actually this might block that other PR that's being reviewed right now that actually passes it. So currently, if a hook is running, the pod worker is completely consumed. So like all hooks really suck today. Like hooks in pods block all other operations on the pod. So
at least the post start, yes.
All of them, pre-stop as well. Like when a hook is processing, nothing else can be done on that pod. You can't restart other containers. You can't update status from the pod sync loop. There's a change being reviewed right now, which is to pass context cancellation down when the pod is terminated, which would have the action of terminating post start. But that PR needs a bunch of EDEs added. This scenario should probably have an EDE added to that PR. Because what would happen is when the deletion's detected, the config loop says it cancels the current pod sync, and that context cancellation would propagate down into the pod sync loop, which would then go and find, it would cancel the context, and then the post start should be bound to the context. So I think I'll link the PR that you need to look at, but I would suggest adding an EDE test in that PR that would capture your scenario. And we want to ensure, because that scenario is it's the first time we're actually doing this in a long time. That may change behavior for people. So maybe the second part of your question, I haven't even thought of, but in general, if you've deleted a pod, you expect certain things to happen. And if there's an argument that people depend on post start running to completion, even when the pod is deleted, we would probably also need to consider it in that PR as well.
Yeah, and for the context, we are working on end-to-end tests because we wanted to enable sidecar restarts during pre-stop. So we started developing a lot of end-to-end tests, and we discovered many inconsistencies in behavior. So this is the biggest one so far, and that's basically the question: do we want to consider this as a bug and terminate post-start, or we want to consider it as a existing behavior, and we need to have a flag to switch to this new behavior and like go through regular deprecation procedures? Is there any opinions?
I certainly know that if you have long post start hooks and somebody deletes you, you're probably, and you want that post start to keep running, you're probably abusing post start. But I think from the perspective of an end user, you can make a reasonable argument. I think this is ultimately, I think one of the things that we need to do, Sergey, is like, we need a cap that defines this behavior. And if we already have a running cap on sidecar, we should actually probably fold this in. I mean, this is, to be able to delay a pod was never an intended behavior. And as we've fixed some things, we've actually made it easier for you to depend on that logic. You know, in 1.17 or 1.18, we actually made it easier for you to depend on some of these things waiting. And I don't know if any new users since then may have started depending on that behavior. On the other hand, I think from an operational perspective on the cluster, I don't know how many platform admins would prefer that deletions can run arbitrarily long without interruption. So there may be like a platform admin workload author discussion we could have.
Sounds good. I think Matthias is a good suggestion to roll it into cap discussion and get an answer there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pranav?
Yeah, hi Sergey. So last in the Feb meeting, I raised a point regarding the kubelet memory leakage. I had an issue where after long hour of long time of post workload termination, the kubelet was still holding on the idle threads. So the suggestion was made to set the kube affinity kubelet's service file configuration to CPU affinity 0 to limit the kubelet to a single core. So I did that, and it did not impact in the memory thread leakage issue. So I think the problem lies within the kubelet. So Also, I wanted to know if there is a if there is a system to limit the threads on the kubelet, because in my team's workload production environment, so they need to limit the threads in the kubelet process. So if we can do that, if there's a system that we can use, or if we can implement a feature in Kubernetes to limit the threads.
It would be great if you post the link to issues that has a discussion already. I think previous comment stands. There is a Golang feature to limit the number of threads, and we really need to know the use case and how fast Go will reclaim those threads and remove those after they were actually needed. So if you can provide this information, it will be really helpful for us to prioritize. Right now, it doesn't feel like a bug. It feels like a feature of a Go. Like it tries to utilize as much resources as possible to make it more efficient. We need to know the side effects and we need to know the impact of it.
Yeah, currently the Go allows the basic like the default value of thread limit is 10,000 per process, but it's like it's too much of a limit. So we wanted just to limit the threads to a fewer numbers. So let me post the link to the issue.
Yeah, we need to figure out if it
What's
makes
the
sense.
impact that you're seeing with the present default behavior?
So from past discussion, I remember the claim was that after those threads were utilized and they actually were needed because there were lots of pods, and then pods were unscheduled, but Kubel doesn't clean up those threads either fast enough or ever. And I didn't get an answer whether it's ever or fast enough.
No, it was forever. Like after 5 to 6 hours, even we waited for 5 to 6 hours, and some teammates waited for even a day. So the threads were still occupied by the kubelet. Yes, that's the issue we're talking about.
It may also be useful to check the Golang upstream if there are any issues open around this, or any open active discussions around changing the behavior here.
Yeah, actually, there have been some discussions regarding this behavior, but they are quite old, and there wasn't any conclusion in any of those discussions that I followed. I tried to post a link on the meeting agenda after this meeting.
Okay.
So
Is there anything
regarding
specific to this being an exec probe in your pod scenario, or you see this without exec probes?
Yeah, come again, I didn't understand, sorry.
If I look at the issue, the sample looks like the pod has a bunch of exec probes on it.
Yeah, we did that to like reproduce the issue to see if to ensure that the workload decide to generate more and more threads, and see if after the workload is terminated, the threads are being freed or not. So the issue arises in the team often, but this was this configuration, these probes were configured only for testing purposes.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to wonder is if the issue only manifests with exec probes, or it also manifests with let's say HTTP probes. Basically, I was trying to figure out if there's a CRI issue here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll check on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If Go needs to create threads whenever it does an exec of some fashion, and then, but in this case, I mean, it goes over the CRI, right? So the runtime would end up with a thread. I think we need to look closer.
Yeah, and again, pprobe or any other way you can extract all the traces from those threads, like what those threads are actually doing, and is it something that kubelet can fix by changing code? Like, is it something that's stuck from a kubelet perspective, or it's just Golang behaving this way, being greedy? So that really will help.
Is there a meta question here about, this is the behavior I think some languages just want the CPU limits to provide in some respects. And like, you know, it's not something we ever solved with CPU manager with a static configuration, but like looking forward, is this an opportunity that, you know, stuff that Sasha was saying at KubeCon around, he'd like to see CPU manager folded into the DRA work, the ability to say, you know, maybe from a specific language like Golang or Java, I want to be limited to a set of cores, not in the same way that, you know, CPU limit means today, but I actually want to only run on a set of cores, which would in some respects be a variation of this request, because you're basically asking the OS to present to the process that it is confined to a set of cores. And there's different ways of modeling it, right? This is one way to model it, but the other way might be a more general, like, I only want to be scheduled onto 2 cores.
But Clayton, it's exactly what I was suggesting in the limiting the kubelet systemd service file. So this issue is about the kubelet itself, not the workloads.
Yes, regarding that, I limited the kubelet to a single core by setting the CPU affinity to 0. So that didn't impact the thread leakage. So I guess the issue lies within I think that was to ensure, like, filter out if the issue is within the Golang, like within the Go routines, or within the kubelet itself, like how kubelet manages thread. So the limiting the CPU cores to 1 by setting the CPU affinity to 0, I think it filters out the Go routines and suggests that the issue might lie within the kubelet itself.
I would suggest let's continue in the offline in the issue. I have a couple of things what I would like to see as a debug output before we can draw any conclusions. Who is guilty about this issue?
Yeah, I agree. And then the only thing I'm aware of on the exec stuff is like, let's say you're running CPU limited on a real-time operating system or something, then exec probes might not have worked. But either way, I was just trying to ask the question on this issue if it was only noticeable with exec probes and not HTTP probes, or if you're seeing this outside of the one reproducer here. So if we have a dump as described, I think we can actually figure out what the right fix is. I'm not sure I know this is the right fix or not.
Okay, so can you put this like in the notes? I'll look upon that.
I'm not sure who you asked about notes. There is a document, you can edit it, and you can also put it in the issue, so it will be easier to look up in future. With that, I think we're done with this topic. I will want to move to the next one. There is a proposal that I sent earlier, I mean, actually yesterday night. It's about workgroup serving. You can read this proposal in this email, and it's a very long email, so you may have missed it. There is also a very interesting link here for use cases for workgroup serving. So in a couple words, today in Kubernetes, we able to run many types of workloads, and including EIML workloads, but EIML is a little bit special, and we hit so many limitations of Kubernetes when run EIML workloads. So for training and for batch jobs, we decided to create workgroup batch, and it was worked successfully and enabled many nice experiences for training of models. But for inference, we still have a lot of limitations and problems and user requests, especially when we're talking about very expensive hardware that you need to utilize. You need to make sure that you can schedule efficiently, you can preempt work if needed, so it wouldn't be utilizing all the resources all the time. We need to handle idle pods very differently and maybe more aggressively. So many things like that needs to be handled, and all those features are spread across very many SIGs. I listed few. I think I forgot APIs, machinery here. So all SIGs will need to do some adjustments, and we plan to work with SIGs to do those adjustments and to coordinate our work. Specifically for SIG Node, I think it will be mostly around DRA and how we share resources, plus work around pod preempting and handling idle pods more efficiently. There is lots of opportunities here to improve the inference workloads. And if you have any feedback, use cases, scenarios, I would encourage you to go to this document, and help us adjust the goals and then participate in the working group if you're interested.
Okay, I'm all in favor of this group. One question which rises to me, is it overlapping too much with work group batch?
Oh, batch is for most driving for training. This is more like want to focus on inference job. I think Clayton is here. Clayton, please.
I mean, Kube has two types of workloads: serving workloads and batch workloads. And working group batch isn't just on training, but it is chartered to focus on batch. There is no working group that's chartered to work on serving, and serving is a problem. I think SIG apps, it's the same reason that we had SIG apps before. Apps was intended to be a general catch-all, but over time, what we found was that there's need to go specifically work on special areas. Like SIG apps originally took requirements around deployments, and then it took requirements around stateful sets. And then working group batch was a little bit more effective at driving concrete use cases. I think that's kind of why we're proposing working group serving, is to concretely go after non-batch workload problems.
Okay, makes sense.
But
they should collaborate. Like I think to your general point, I would expect working group serving to work very closely with batch to find points of commonality. And if we don't call that out in the proposal, we should.
But there's do have a little bit overlap because the John, I didn't see John is here today. John actually have another proposal for the DRA work group, and that one I do think about is have some overlap with this one, but we need to figure out the boundary.
Yeah, I would think about the difference being that serving should be focused on workload and reliability level intent. And I think it should drive use cases and work with the proposed DRA working group. So the kind of the trinity there would be DRA focuses on accelerators, batch focuses on batch, and serving focuses on serving. And if there's use cases that need better accelerator support, that's a great place to coordinate with the DRA working group. And if there's use cases that need better CPU pinning for high performance serving workloads that are, that I think that would be another example of that wouldn't be serving's responsibility, that would be DRA's. But we should definitely call that out in the charters.
The major overlap to me, it is, of course, it's one is from the top down, right? Application level. This is the serving and the batch. More is from the workload perspective. That's the top down, and the DRA is more from bottom up, from the infrastructure perspective. But once you go to like the scheduling, auto scaling, all those kind of things, actually, then there's the overlap because both have to meet each other at that level.
Yeah, there is overlap, but serving is way wider. So from scheduling perspective, we do need to talk about resource usage, but also need to understand how stateful sets will work, how load balancers will be scheduled, and stuff like that.
So what will be the immediate goal? Like, are we trying to line up work that we want to prioritize for 131 across all SIGs?
At least I know what's the goal. We should know what's the immediate goal for DRA. But
Yeah, exactly. We know the DRA portions, right? Like, but what are we trying to
what's the
target beyond that?
Yeah, how we can support the serving and the batch for the SIG Node community. So far, I basically think about we support the full 100% support DRA effort, but what about the serving and batch?
If there was one really concrete thing that I don't want to ding DRA on, but I just want to say that this is my example that I'm using, is DRA talks about exposing a bunch of ways of workloads, specifying all this really complex hardware requests. But most workload authors, that's not their responsibility. That's more of a platform or a coordination between like the platform, the person who's going to go get all that infrastructure and lined up, working with the workload author. Not every workload needs to go specify in excruciating detail all the hardware it needs, right? That the resource model exists for CPU specifically so that you don't have to go specify in excruciating detail all of the architectures and that you need for your workload. So I think serving needs to look through the DRA use cases and look at what most workloads would need out of the DRA use cases for accelerators and propose some examples. That's one area that they could collaborate. But I don't think that that's SIG survey or working group serving's responsibility necessarily, but I think working group serving should be accountable to say, yeah, like a whole bunch of people want to go run these workloads. Here's what the platform team owns. Here's what the workload team would own, and here's why. So that's complementary to what DRA is doing. And that would be using some of the more complicated features in a more abstract way.
Can I expect it? So like, for example, yesterday I talked to the John. I tried to help him to figure out who can validate, right? Infrastructure people, admin people to validate internal, externally, to validate the DRA. And but when once you talk about the user, real developer or data scientist, and to schedule those serving workload or like a training workload, can you find, not you, I'm talking about the serving and batch, to find those to validate, then we can work together. So the basically boundary, John and I said it is still is at platform, but we really need, because all we engage in is so far is try to find the platform developer and also platform admin. So all over the place. But
yeah, I think that's a great summary, Don. I agree that, and we don't yet have, like, there's a couple people who are doing various forms of workload controllers specifically for inference, and I think if we were talking about what do we need to auto scale those, and what are the use cases that most people will have most of the time auto scaling, like a serving workload across one or multiple accelerator types. That is a very concrete place where, a platform team might say, yeah, here's the accelerators you're going to get. Here's the accelerators I can get from the cloud. But there might also be a scenario where the platform team doesn't want to, know all of the details about what accelerators are available from the cloud. And the workload needs to say, I need at least this, but I prefer this. That preference is something that is likely to be common for a large class of inference workloads. And that preference would be a great example of what you just said, Dawn. It'd be something that, workload controller might want to do automatically. And then we would need a good agreement between what DRA is exposing and what platform admins would want to go use, to control what's available.
So can I try to attempt to propose one of the concrete deliverable for the 1.31 from this work group, serving work group? Just generate something like the CUJ. And as a developer, you want to run this saving jobs. Here it is you prefer. Just give it to us so we decode. We as the SIG Node together with other platform developer. So we decode that kind of things and can see we can meet. Is that okay to meet your requirement? So then those kind of things can, as the also feedback loop, later to the serving work group or whatever work node work group, and to influence of those our API, right? So that's why I can can you give us the CUG and something like the described what exactly what they can give to us, then we can decode that one and say how bottom up we can support this. Then we can
I
meet.
think that's reasonable.
Okay, thanks.
I think this document already started thinking in this direction. It's not prioritized list by no means, but it already attempts to do use cases. So we need to do more work in converting this in specific CUJs with specific steps. It's a good suggestion. Thank you. Is there any more feedback? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next topic. Next, I put a cap planning. We wanted to start planning this week, but we also have like 5, 6 other topics. I'm not sure if we'll have time to all of them, but maybe we can postpone planning to the next time.
Yeah, I think let's postpone it, and I think we can do a bit more prep for it for next week.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I started a document. Let's maybe just quickly. I started this document. I put table as we usually have. So if you have a cap and you plan it for 131 for sure, just move it up the list or add it here in the table. I put a couple suggestions from past meetings that we wanted to start tracking. So if you want to own one of them and you want to track it for 131, put it in the table, and then it will be easier for us to have a discussion next week. Okay.
What's the way for people to capture like the demand? Because last week we talked about we want to try a little bit different because the SIG Node always have the most of the caps, right? So so then we spread too thin, and at the end we couldn't deliver that many. So we want to focus. I remember people proposed last time top 5 or something like that, so we can be more focused. So how we capture that one before next week's meeting? Maybe we can, how we are going to do it.
I think the idea was to collect a list of what we want to track early, so we will be able to concentrate on things and maybe sequence them a little bit better.
Wait a minute. What I'm talking about it is because normally in corporate planning, right? So internal, every company's planning, they were based on the user's demand, the customer demand, right? So in the past, I did mention that we prioritize, in the earlier time, we prioritize like the direct AI based on a lot of demand we know and then prioritize. But the last 2 or 3 years we didn't. It's a little bit like the ad hoc. So now we want to change it. So how we capture of the demand today? Right, so we cannot just like so how we want to capture through this, because we want to change the profiles based on the demand, the user demand. What's the plan? What's the change?
Do we want to have a poll or something, or open it up? I don't know what's the best way to do it.
I don't know, because this is I remember last meeting people proposed that, right? So we want to prioritize and focus. So because last 3 years we changed the format, it's more like if we can find recruit of the reviewer and also approver, then and also and we just using some judgment call and make that is a higher priority or lower priority. So it's not like the normal you want to prioritize. So people proposed last week and want to have more based on the demand and the strategy and something to process. So I want to say, okay, since you have that one, any process suggestion?
I don't know, maybe +1, -1, open it up and see what happens. That can always be gamed. We don't know, but we can try.
Okay, we can change. Okay.
We're actually 2 aspects from that side. Like one side is like what people demanding, and they have their own priority. Second thing is the availability of reviewers and approvers. Is like, do we have commitment on those or not? So we need somehow to get very realistic on both of those sides.
Exactly. I mean, you should have people lining up to review or approve that. And even if something has a lot of demand, we may not find enough people.
No, some people we don't have people just resolve their desire, but we don't have solution. Okay, we will just do. We will go with the flow. Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about it more and try to understand how you collect the demand. I don't know how much we need to overview it for that, but definitely something to start looking into. Next topic is from Anish. Anish, are you here?
Yes, I had added this to agenda a few weeks ago, but I was unable to attend. The TLDR here is for this issue is that the container status changes to unknown when it is evicted due to exceeding ephemeral storage limit. I did some root cause and I found out that there was a race condition that was removing the container before kubelet updates the status. Last week I actually made some changes to the fix and added some checks to the existing tests, and I ran it I ran the test like 1,000 times, and I didn't see any such race condition with the fix in this PR. So the ask here basically is for a review. If somebody who's familiar with this part of code base help with the review. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alish.
Okay. Yeah, it's already marked as important soon and accepted. I will figure out how to remove.
No. Are we actually supposed to try to terminate the container gracefully? Do we actually make a commitment somewhere that that's the case?
On eviction?
Right, that's what's
There's
catching me off here, is that like you've exceeded your usage, and the assertion is that we try to terminate you gracefully.
this-
I didn't think we ever made any commitment that any evicting action had to be done gracefully. I thought we always short-circuited graceful termination.
well, there's two things. Is this an eviction or is this you reach your limit? Because reaching your limit is not the same thing as eviction. From the perspective of I need to recover the node by going and telling everybody. Like I'm trying to keep the node healthy by killing things. From you violated your limits, therefore we take an aggressive action. So is it the former or the latter?
That's a good thing to get clarity on. That it wasn't clear from reading this, but in general,
Yeah,
I had always looked at ephemeral storage enforcement as best effort. And so I was curious if, as a part of best effort here, there was an assumption that graceful was a commitment rather than a reality, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I can answer the former, which is what we do is we don't do every container stop is graceful, which is we give every container at least 1 second to stop being a bad boy within 1 second, and then we give it the hard kill, and that's just that's what we've always done. And a second in these scenarios, in most of the eviction scenarios, that first one, we need to recover the node, did not feel overly aggressive. So as part of the changes that went into standardizing the container stop, every container gets a very minimal amount of time to try to term. That I believe the expectation is that all other scenarios, unless there was a very concrete reason we should be doing graceful termination, this is kind of in the middle. If this is the middle ground, which is it's you using too much storage, it's not really the former and it's not really a graceful. In the past, when we talk about hard limits, it's usually better to have hard limits that can actually be enforced hard, not by just terminating the workload. So if this could destabilize others on the node, that would probably fall more in the first case. If this is just you violating your limit, it feels more like the second case.
Actually, Kalina, you confuse me.
Anyway, mostly I just talk about this issue as like, what's the actual impact of reported status being unknown for this? And in general, what's the expectation of like, we should tighten things where we can tighten them, but I guess in general, like scarce resources, unclear if this was on a per pod basis or the node basis, but wasn't really sure if people were assuming we had a greater guarantee than we did. And I agree, Clayton, with what you're saying, that like basically we're not respecting the pod's advertised graceful termination period.
Yeah, and respecting the average graceful is okay in some cases, and it's really just whether you're hurting other people or not. And if you're hurting other people, you get the smack. And if you're just hurting yourself, I think there's a reasonable argument that we may be too aggressive. Actually, I was looking at the PR, and some of this code actually is, I was the last touch on that. So this is all scary code, but it's important to get this right. I would say, in general, we should never see container status unknown unless the kubelet has died or been restarted. There is no excuse for kubelet ever getting things out of order. So we should always fix a bug that results in container status unknown.
Okay,
unless it's the kubelet restarting. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with your last comment. But another thing, so what I'm thinking about, it is for grace determination. We respect, if possible, but there's the cap. And I also agree with you, like if you hurt, if you only hurt yourself and there's the slack resource, and we maybe have some room buffer and for you to use, but if you once you hurt the node, hurt other thing, and then we have to step beyond you. So those 2 points I agree, and then the rest needs follow up offline on this change. But again, Anish, thanks for address this problem and raise the awareness.
Okay, coming back, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more topics and only 3 minutes. I don't think we will get to any of those topics in 3 minutes. Oh, except this one.
Sergey?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we might be able to talk on this one because this meeting is very late for my time zone. I believe that for all people from the EMEA region, it would be significantly better if we can make this meeting a bit earlier. Even 2 to 3 hours earlier might be a great difference. Yeah, just wanted to check if this is acceptable.
Problem is what majority of the people in US. So we in Europe just need to take the hit on that, unfortunately.
Right, but you know, maybe we can find a middle ground here. I mean, even 1 or 2 hours earlier would be a great difference because now, I mean, in my time zone, I'm ending the meeting in 9 p.m., which is extremely late.
We may need to collect more feedback on like how many people will attend if we will move it 1 hour or like 2 hours earlier. How many more people we will get? It's maybe a good data point. Do you want to start any like way to collect this information if you want to drive it?
Sure. What do you think is the appropriate way? Should I post a message on SIG Node channel?
That may be a good starting point. Maybe you can create a Google form to track some responses. Yeah, some of the time earlier may be really hard for me, and I know a few other people in the US, but we need to be inclusive. So if you have a lot of people who want to attend but cannot attend because of time difference, maybe we can add another time. An alternative may not be just early couple hours, but also like very late in the US time, and it will end up in being like friendly for APAC as well as Europe.
Sure, that works out well. Okay, great. I'll start a conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, with that, I want to finish this meeting. If you had a topic but we didn't get to it, please move it to the next time. It just got too many. If you will move today, so your topic will be on top. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.